Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Rock and Roll Religion, where we've got a first for this channel for you today. We are finally digging into death metal. I've put it off for a long time. I wasn't a huge fan of a lot of death metal stuff, and then I found these guys, and it was just kind of clicked for me. And hopefully, you guys will enjoy it as well. Of course, today we are talking about the mighty Bolt Thrower from Coventry, England, a first wave death metal band that has some serious sci-fi roots that we'll get into here in a minute. And to help me do that, we have a couple of people. Of course, anytime we talk about anything dark, evil, and or Stompy Robot related, we have this guy here. Welcome back, Imperatus. How you doing, man?
What's going on, man?
We
Doing all right.
there
Allergies
you
are
go.
bothering me a bit today, but that time.
Yeah,
of year.
that happens this time of year.
Yep.
And of course, anytime we're talking anything metallic, doomy, or anti-communist, we have the Sentinel with us. How's it going, dude?
Hell, how's it going?
Good to have
Doing
you
pretty
back.
good.
Good to have
Yeah,
you
it's
both
good to be
back.
back.
Wait a minute.
Allergies are kicking my ass too, so
Yeah,
I can relate. I got doubled up on dessert tech, but that's about it.
I think we're all on that bus at this point. Because especially just moving down here, oh, dude, the hay fever's been kicking my ass the last week.
Ouch.
But no, I mean, Sentinel's a newcomer to this band, just like I am. Imperatus, you've heard them before.
Who?
Bolt Thrower.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you'll be kind of our guide in this land of darkness and evil.
Yeah, par for the course.
On this one. First of all, let's see who's here. We've got this Sentinel guy who keeps stalking me. I don't know what he's doing here, but it happens. And then Christian Delorme, always good to see you, man. And glad you sent me some of those pictures of you at your son's ceremony. That was freaking awesome, dude. And then Soul Assassin as usual. Great to see you guys. As always, hit the like button, share this link out so other people can come and join our shenanigans. If you do feel like supporting the channel financially, especially those who are listening after the stream ends, there isn't a link in the description to a Stream Elements link. So if you can donate to that, I appreciate it. I don't advise it because it just encourages me to do dumb shit. But, let the buyer beware. But with that all out of the way, we are getting into the first one. I kind of arranged these chronologically, but they're also my three favorite albums from Bolt Thrower, which we're going to start with Realm of Chaos.
Yes. I was listening to it all fucking morning. It's an incredible album.
Yeah, it really is. It's heavy, it's melodic, and it fits the subject material perfectly because this one straight up is directly inspired by Warhammer 40K.
Now, is this the cover that they had to change based on the lawsuit?
I don't know if it was a lawsuit, but they did have a contract with Games Workshop for a while in 1987 when this album came out.
Okay.
And then they had this as the original cover, which this is official Games Workshop art.
Okay.
From, I believe, Rogue Trader, which is the predecessor to Warhammer 40K.
Okay.
If not, it was Warhammer 40K second edition, really. Because this is that era of artwork. I recognize it. And it's not even like they're trying to hide it. These are straight up Crimson Fist chapter Space Marines. Like it's that on the cover. And especially when you look into some of the track titles, and we'll get into, and apparently this artwork and the next album's art that we're going to talk about, War Master, were both done by one of the original artists for Games Workshop, man by name of John Riddick, I think. So that's how close this was. And that's the remastered cover. So still pretty close. You can still tell it's pretty inspired by it, but
Yeah, so I was watching the video based on the remastered cover. It's definitely because it just said Realms of Chaos. It didn't say anything underneath it.
Yeah, they added they deleted the second half of the title, which is interesting. But you would have been around at the time this came out in Paradise, so what did you think of it?
This wasn't the first album I heard from. The first one I heard was War Master.
Okay, so that's the next one we're going to talk about. But what do you think of this one?
It's good. I think some of their later stuff is better.
I would agree with that.
I mean, my personal favorite is the title track.
Yeah, Realm of Chaos.
No, I'm sorry, not the title track. World Eater.
Oh, World Eater is fucking phenomenal. That's in the running for my top Bolt Thrower album or songs of all time. But yeah, the rest of this album's pretty good too. It's melodic. It's heavy as fuck. For once, I don't actually mind the vocals in a death metal album, which is interesting for me because I'm used to, Cannibal Corpse or Napalm Death or somebody like that where, I like the rest of it, but the vocals just drive me out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But here it just fits. I don't know why. And Sentinel, you were saying something similar,
I was saying something similar. Yeah, I was saying to the effect that for me to understand the lyrical connection to 40K, I would have to have the lyrics in front of me. But the lyrics do not affect the way I listen to the music at all. They don't turn me off. And actually, Bolt Thrower is basically reminded me the most of Amon Amarth, to be honest. As far as a modern day kind of band, if I never heard a Bolt Thrower before, that's who they reminded me of sound wise. And on the subject of like lyrics, I listen to Children of Bodom. You don't need to have a lyric sheet in front of you to kind of emote what is being said or thought. But as far as like if you want to get into like the trickiness of or the more detailedness of the lore of 40K, which is maybe you do, maybe you don't. So that's why I would want to have those lyrical sheets in front of me so that I would know what specifically he's talking about.
Yeah, like in order to get into like the actual like lore things that he's talking about, you'd need to have a lyric sheet in front of you. But I think from a musical standpoint, they capture the spirit of what is chaos in 40K, which is literally the forces of hell.
Cool.
So basically in Warhammer 40K, and I do have a full fandom or random fandom video on Warhammer 40K, our first one that I did with Fizchozo a couple weeks ago now. So if you guys are confused on 40K lore or anything we say here sounds interesting and you want to know more, you can go check out that channel or that stream. Because we did a full breakdown of most of the factions, most of the character, or some of the characters, stuff like that. And I had a lot of fun doing it. We're going to do more, probably on BattleTech. It's going to be the next one. But yeah, this is straight up like a love letter to the Chaos faction in Warhammer 40K. Because you have, song titles like Into the Eye of Terror, which is essentially their home. You have Plague Bearer, which is one of the demons of Nurgle. World Eater, which is one of the traitor Space Marine legions that became servants of Khorne, which is another one of the Chaos gods. Like this one is straight up ripped from the pages of Warhammer 40K, essentially. And I really had an appreciation for it for that. Like it fits the subject very well. Especially with that dystopian setting where basically everything sucks. It's all shit and it's only going to get worse. And in Paris, did you know anything about 40K when you heard these guys?
No, I didn't.
They were just another death metal band?
Just another death metal band, yeah.
Cool. And Sentinel was saying, how well known are these guys? Because I never really heard their name before like 5-6 years ago.
Back in the day, they were pretty well known because a lot of the popular death metal bands at the time were coming out of England. Carcass, Napalm Death, these
Okay.
guys, My
Because
Dying
their first
Bride.
album's 87, 88. So
Yeah.
they're right up there with Cannibal Corpse as like
Mm-hmm.
first wave death metal.
Yeah, they are. They definitely are. I would say they are. They were like mid-tier popularity.
So they weren't up
Well,
there
at
with
least
like
around the time
Napalm
of this
Death or
album.
okay.
Because if
So
you
they
know,
weren't up there with like Napalm Death or
no, not
Cannibal Corpse,
really.
but they were
Well,
down.
you know, at the time too, you still had to dig for death metal.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
Like at this point, you're really sifting through the.
Well,
Was it the England thing? Because I heard they're from England.
yeah, they're from England, and so is Carcass, so is Napalm Death, My Dying Bride, Benediction. You know,
So
bunch.
they might have gotten lost in that kind of like international shuffle. Like because I was thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, these guys sound so much like early Cannibal Corpse. Why aren't they a part of like the Tampa Bay death metal scene? And it's because
Well,
they're
it's
from
because
England.
they're not from Tampa.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fair enough. And Soul Assassin,
And
unfortunately, they're not a rising band. They are a dead band now. They broke up in 2016 after their longtime drummer Carl died, and they have said that they will not be getting back together. So Bolt Thrower is unfortunately done. We will get into their last output at the end of this little episode, though, and spoiler, it's some of my favorite. But yeah, so it sounds like they were like middling popularity, and they were just kind of one of the death metal bands in the first wave.
yeah, well, at the time when this came out too, you got to remember death metal wasn't really a thing.
Well, yeah. Well, the funny part is like death metal wasn't really a thing, and neither was Warhammer 40K yet.
Right.
We're talking like Rogue Trader second edition and maybe Space Hulk in the middle there, where Games Workshop is just starting to adapt Warhammer Fantasy into a sci-fi setting. So, like, we're talking like I think 84 was when they created Warhammer Fantasy. So 87, 88 is like the Rogue Trader days, like the very early pre-40K 40K, where it was just kind of like a rough idea, not even fully sketched out yet, which is really cool to me. And Games Workshop at this point actually apparently, not only do the guys really like the setting, Games Workshop actually partnered with them on this album and I think the next one, War Master. And I have a picture of some of the back art is just the same. It's like, and I love how close it's like we are making this as 40K as possible without getting slapped by a lawsuit. Because if you look at some of the 40K art, like this is damn close, especially some of the early stuff. But yeah, you have like Eternal War, Through the Eye of Terror, Dark Millennium, Lost Souls Domain, Plague Bearer, World Eater. It's literally just like a Chaos Codex in musical form, which I fucking love because I'm a huge 40K nerd. But really, the next album is where it really gets interesting for a lot of people, which is War Master. And Imperatus, you said this was the first album you heard by them?
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, judging by the artwork, this is more Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah, I would say so.
Although there are references to 40K on here, including the title track, War Master, which is a reference to either the original War Master, Horus, or Abaddon. So I think that's really cool that they kind of reference both in one go here. And again, the artwork is great because it's like so 80s heavy metal and sci-fi at once. Like in like terms of like almost like a Man of War cover in a way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like so over the top and ridiculous. It's amazing. And actually the centerpiece here kind of looks like somebody from a Man of War cover.
Yeah.
What album was that where they had the guy on top of the pile with the freaking sword held high?
Heavy of Steel.
Might have been.
Warriors of the World, maybe?
Yeah, Fighting the World might have been it. But it was great. And this album kicks ass too. I mean, again, it's if these guys are obviously chaos players because everything they tell is from the realm of chaos, and they do a really good job of it too. Of like unleashed upon mankind, the shreds of sanity, profane creation, cenotaph, and war master, which I think is the highlight on this one. The title tracks are usually like far and away above everything else.
War Master's really good, so Cenotaph.
Cenotaph's excellent as well. Although just playing this album cover to cover, I had a hard time picking out any one that wasn't really good. Like, I was just vibing with all of it. Because it speeds up, it slows down, and yet there's always this really oppressive, just crushing undertone to all of it, which I love. And is that indicative of death metal as a total?
Not really.
Okay. So it's just these guys, really? Or maybe just this album?
Yeah. I mean, at the time, most death metal was... You had the couple off bands that were more satanic or occult leaning, like Deicide and Morbid Angel. But most of the time, it really was just gore lyrics.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, 40K and especially Chaos is the perfect setting for that.
Yeah, well, that's not what I'm talking about, though. I'm talking like, Cannibal Corpse style lyrics that are just so over the top, they're stupid.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that I was thinking earlier was that if you're gonna do it like a first wave death metal album about like a sci-fi setting, 40K is perfect for it. Because you have like super horror and gore themed, like over the top, 8-foot tall, genetically modified murder machines in power armor versus literal demons. Like, what could be more metal?
It does sound very metal.
It's like it was like it was designed for this.
I'm surprised I haven't seen kind of a tribute or a parody of Bolt Thrower in Metalocalypse for as long as it went on.
Now that you say that, I'm kind of surprised. Although if you didn't know who Bolt Thrower was, they may have thrown in a couple of riffs here or there, and we just never noticed.
Maybe.
Because I haven't really known about Bolt Thrower until the last few years, really until I became a 40K fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept hearing them get brought up. And I'm like, oh, are Bolt Thrower like 40K fans? Like, not only are they fans, their music is based on it. I'm like, oh, okay. So I, they were kind of on my list for a long time. And then when I started doing this show, I'm like, you know what? I keep wanting to get into death metal. I'll keep bringing back to it. And finally we got to it. And I'm really glad we did because I had a lot of fun this week listening to these records. And again, they're fast on some tracks, but they never lose that melody, which I think is my problem with Cannibal Corpse and a lot of stuff, is that it's just pure aggression. And there's no kind of organization behind it at all. Whereas this, some of it's very fast, but it's all very controlled and very tight. You know what I mean? And a lot of the riffs and stuff like that would not sound out of place on any other metal album. They're just downtuned a little bit. And you never really lose what the rhythm is supposed to be. And I do have to give a big shout out for especially these last two records, to their bass section. Holy shit. Like, compared to most of the bands we do, these bass guys the bass and bass drum are fucking titanic in this mix. Like, did that stand out to you guys too?
A bit.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Imperative.
No, you're not wrong on that, Bo. They definitely have a really solid sound, down-tuned, crunchy, but at the same time, like you said, has a bit of melody to it.
Yeah.
And like you said too, it's not like, other early wave death metal bands where it was just pure aggression.
Yeah, which I like for some stuff, but I also enjoy this, or like Children of Bodom, where it's a little more melodic and there's a little bit more order to it. You know what I mean? where like you can
Right.
kind of figure out where it's going, and it's not just as fast as possible. Although I mean, we have done Demolition Hammer, so I like fast and aggressive.
There's
That's
nothing
one
wrong
of the
with that.
fastest thrash bands I've ever heard.
Fast and aggressive is very, very good. It's a good thing.
When done right. Like, it can also be done really wrong, especially if you get the production wrong on it,
Yeah,
and it just sounds muddy as shit.
yeah.
And you just get I mean, far be it for a metalhead to complain about that like wall of sound stuff, but when it sounds like that on the album, it can be very difficult to kind of differentiate what's going on musically.
That and it's the difference between a full production album and a demo, to be honest.
Yeah. Like, and there are some demos out there that I think kick ass too.
Some demos are better than some of the fucking records I've heard. So.
Yeah, you're not wrong on that. I mean, the production, it all depends on what genre you're in. Like black metal, it's not supposed to be produced. They're all supposed to sound like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not wrong. Whereas I've seen some demos that sounded better than the studio version of that song because they kind of either overproduced it or they got the mix wrong or something like that, and it just sounded better raw.
Yeah.
These guys, I think, have just the right amount of production where they've filtered out a lot of the noise, but you still leave that heaviness in there of that bass line and that really deep guitar work. Which, if I'm not mistaken, is probably either drop D or it's easily drop D. It could be lower than that. But either way, it sounds phenomenal. You have that real super meaty bottom end on that guitar work. We just had that dun, which I love to death. Especially coming through a big speaker with a nice subwoofer. It just sound. I wish I could see these guys live because that might sound amazing live. I know Nick's seen these guys. Have you ever seen them in Paradise?
No, I haven't, unfortunately.
No? I was gonna say because I really want to see what these guys sounded like live.
Oh, I'm sure it was an impressive sound live.
Is there any pro shot footage of them live?
I haven't looked into that. There's probably video on YouTube. God knows how professional it is. Of their live performances. But I don't know off the top of my head that any of these were. I mean, they were around for what, 1986 or 87 to 2016. So they were around for damn near 30 years. So I would be surprised if there wasn't any footage of them. I just don't know what quality that footage is. So it could be really professional and well done, and they could have done like a tour diary or whatever, or it could be, somebody recorded on their cell phone in 2002. Because I've seen both on the internet of bands that are around, especially at live shows where. Is it just me, or do death metal bands not really do live concert DVDs or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, there's been a few, but not really a lot.
I was going to say, because I've seen like one or two, and that's about it.
Yeah, there really wasn't a lot, because it was one of those things of, A, they didn't have money for it.
That's probably the big...
B, they weren't playing in venues where it was really conducive to record.
Yeah, and, like you said, that shit's expensive, and death metal bands don't make a lot of money.
No, especially not back then.
No, especially not in the 80s. Like, that was like, you're the underground guys. Like, you open for other bands if you're lucky.
Not even in the 90s.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, apparently there are video of them playing festivals. Can you guys vamp for me for a second? I'll be right back.
I just found on Amazon the Realms of Chaos import audio CD. I think it's a remastered version that they put out in 2013. It's usually remastered and expanded two disc CD DVD the unfortunate problem with this is that the DVD is PAL region 2, which means it won't work on any of your DVD or Blu-ray players unless you have a region free.
Which isn't that hard to deal with, honestly, in this day and age.
That's true.
Because most PC software for DVD players
do both.
Yeah, it'll be region free. Like I don't think, like for example, a DVD ROM in a PC has any sort of region locking. It's the actual DVD players.
Well, there you go, guys. Yeah, it's a 1989 live performance. I think, yeah, just if they play Eternal War, Through the Terror, that remains World Eater, Lost Souls Domain, Drowned in Torment, Realms of Chaos. Full unreleased live performance from 1989.
Okay. Hey, lovely Sherry. Good to see you here.
Hey, lovely Sherry.
But no, like, you know what I was just thinking was these guys kind of remind me of Sodom played at half speed.
Kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very much a lower pitch, but the same notes and same attitude.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, although a lot of early death metal was kind of like slowed down speed metal or slowed down thrash in a lot of ways.
Or down-tuned thrash, basically.
Or down-tuned, yeah. If they were doing the same tempo, they were going lower.
Yeah, they were lower, yeah.
Like they were going down to like C sharp or something like that. Whereas most thrash or heavy metal tuning is either E standard or drop D.
Mm-hmm. I think it's an arch enemy playing like B or some shit like that.
I don't know. I'm not a huge Arch Enemy fan, so I've never really looked into it. I know Priest plays an E standard most of the time because I actually asked Richie Faulkner directly, and he gave me the exact tuning specs for that thing.
Sweet.
That he used. So
sweet.
I can't say I didn't get the information straight from the source.
The horse's mouth, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the man straight up told me himself. He's like, "Yeah, here you go."
Sweet.
The E standard, a couple other things. There are little tweaks on that from like the bog standard guitar setup. But other than that, it's actually pretty basic. Now, I don't know offhand. I could swear I hear a 7-string in here somewhere.
It's possible. I'm not sure.
Lower, deeper end.
It could have just been the tuning and the effects pedals they were using too. I mean, look at the Swedish death metal scene. Their entire scene was predicated on one effects pedal being cranked to the max.
Yeah, pretty much. Of just basically.
Let us know which effects pedal.
Fuck.
Let us know which one.
I don't remember which one it was. Because that's pretty much how they got that like seriously crunchy sound,
especially on that low
Ibanez Tube Screamer,
or just that dun.
Ibanez Tube Screamer.
Without it petering out on them, because that sound is great. That just like low bone crushing, just vibrating sound where you can feel it in your freaking chest. Like, especially live. That's what we go to live shows for.
Yeah.
And anyone who's been to a live metal show and like when you walk in the door and you feel that vibration hitting you, it's just like, oh, one of the best feelings of all time. Especially the drum pattern though, too, is just fucking awesome where you have that really fast-paced double bass with actually a fairly slow top rhythm. And it kind of varies depending on the song. And one thing I like that's almost Black Sabbath-like is they will change tempo on a dime. Or completely change the groove on a dime and then go back into it seamlessly. It's really, really good.
So what they used to use was, and there was a couple. There was the MT2 Metal Zone pedal boosted by a Tube Screamer clone into a Bandit 65. Or the other one that was used a lot too was the Boss HM2 pedal.
Okay. I've heard of the Boss HM2. I don't own one, although maybe I should.
Good luck, since people realized that, oh, hey, I can do this with it. Prices shot up.
Oh, so it's like the GCM 800 amps, where like once everyone remembered that the 80s metal was awesome and this is what everyone used, they're impossible to find, and they're like $2,000 for a 40-year-old amp.
Yeah, because the one article I saw, it was a guy from a Swedish death metal band. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, even though I just looked at it. But he was saying, everybody in the Swedish scene was able to find these cheap because people bought them, thought they sounded like shit, and you were able to turn around and get them for like 10, 20 kroner.
Yeah. And it probably sounds like shit until you run a shit ton of current through it, and then it sounds amazing. Because that's usually how, that's how the overdrive sound kind of got its start, was people were actually basically over amping their amplifiers.
Well, specifically though, it's not all Swedish death metal that has this sound, and it's not even just old school, but you have bands like Grave, Entombed, Dismember, for some of the classic ones, and more recently you have what the fuck's that band's name? Bloodbath.
Okay.
Which was honestly started as a side project from the guys from Opeth.
Okay, so before we get into like the last real album from these guys, because I want to get into that in depth, because I loved every single song on this record. Paris, if you don't mind, give us like a rundown of what was going on right about this time in this side of the metal scene.
Dude, I was like 12.
Well, but you know more about it than we do.
Well, yeah. I mean, I couldn't really say what was going on then because I didn't really know.
What's going on kind of like contemporary to this in terms of bands coming out and stuff like that. So just to give everybody a better mental picture of.
I mean, people got to bear in mind, like this was at the time when metal was dying, so to speak. Grunge was supplanting it on MTV and the radio, and most people, when thrash started kind of fading into the underground or away, they didn't know where to turn. Because some people would hear death metal and be like, no.
Which I can see as a reaction to, especially the vocal style. Like people are used to like kind of more soothing vocals. And when you don't take the vocals as another instrument in the band, like I have always said, I can definitely see that reaction. It's one I used to have.
Well, yeah, and at the time too, people were used to some of like the hair bands and some of the more mainstream thrash, and Metallica was getting popular. And then this comes out and it's just pure unadulterated aggression.
Yeah, this at least is more melodic and just down paced,
but it's still aggressive.
Thrash. But it's still aggressive as fuck, yeah.
Yeah,
it kind of combines the darker elements of both thrash and doom metal.
Yeah, it's got a doomy feel to it for sure.
Because you get that like really low funereal bottom end on it, and sometimes even that low tempo.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
With that super aggressive vocal.
I would agree with that. Absolutely. I could hear that on Realms of Chaos.
It just sounds like this evil creature that's coming to get you, basically.
And what also people need to understand too is metal has always been kind of cyclical, almost like how pro wrestling is.
Yeah.
So you had your first wave of, British heavy metal bands. So, you had your trad metal stuff. People started getting bored with that. Thrash started coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thrash went by the wayside. Death metal started rising up. Death metal started becoming rote and formulaic and other reasons.
And that's when you see the second wave of black metal pop up.
Yes.
Really.
And that's exactly how and why I discovered that second wave of black metal, because death metal was starting to get boring.
Okay. Yeah, so like you can almost become desensitized to.
It's not even desensitized. It's you can only hear the same style songs from 8 different bands so many times if you're like, all right, guys, come on, do something.
Well, that's kind of what I mean by desensitized too. You're just kind of like, I don't hate it, but it's just kind of there.
Yeah.
Does that speak to a larger criticism of death metal itself? Because you can't make, unlike
death metal is one of those genres where if you're not good at it, you're not in a good band.
Yeah. Or if you're not good at writing songs, you're just not good,
Yeah. I mean, you have to be careful because you will fall. This goes for black metal as well. That some of it is just even if it's not meant to be tongue in cheek, comes across that way.
Yeah, and it can be done really well. Like in the first wave of black metal, a lot of it was tongue in cheek, but it was done really well, really aggressively, and stuff like that. And it still came across as very authentic. Where some of the later stuff I've heard that was obviously tongue in cheek and kind of making fun of black metal, just kind of came across as parody,
and
a bad parody.
I mean, case in point, I love Marduk, one of my favorite black metal bands. If you go and read some of their lyrics for some of their more over-the-top blasphemous songs,
oh god,
you're gonna sit there and be like, "Who wrote this? A 12-year-old?"
Yeah, that's kind of honestly, and especially in the age of the internet, because they kind of predate that golden age.
Please give me a song example so I can read. I want to read these lyrics.
I don't know if Pope wants me to say the song title on his channel. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay.
You know what? Fuck it. We'll do it.
Go look at the lyrics for Jesus Christ Sodomize. You're going to be like, really, guys? Really?
Oh, if you think that's blasphemous, there is 2 other ones off of Panzer Division that are bad enough that, you know what, at this point, YouTube says
then you have Christ,
even give a
Christ raping black metal.
Holy shit, it was
Christ raping black metal and
fist fucking God's planet.
Who are you fooling when we die? Must any wolf who turns into a sheep? Yeah, it was written by a 12-year-old.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's nonsensical, but it makes sense.
And the scary part is that song is fucking killer.
Yeah, it really is.
The full song itself, like everything, the sound, the drums, the guitar, et cetera, it's a killer track. But if you actually look at the lyrics, you're like, really?
Yeah, I mean, we might go into Marduk next week if you guys want.
Okay, I gotta look at all those lyrics closer. Then if I'm gonna make fun of Marduk, I gotta make fun of Children of Bodom for the same fucking thing. Because
Children of Bodom is not a good band. There's also that.
They're not
in my opinion.
Well, their first 4 albums are untouchable in my opinion.
Because the thing with them is they, at least to me, came off as a band that decided to hop on the black metal bandwagon to make a name for themselves, and once it kind of petered out a little bit, they went and...
I wouldn't really call them black metal though.
They were categorized as black metal for their first couple albums.
Were they?
Yes.
Only a couple songs on like one album, and that was Something Wild, and then maybe a little bit on maybe one song on Hate Breeder, and I would say that's
well. You know what? Then we'll have to go through that and see why they were classified as black metal, because I remember them as kind of death metal.
I don't even remember them being classified as death metal. I think they said that we don't care how you classify us as long as you don't classify us as power metal.
Fair. Although I can see why, because they were very on the symphonic side of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of symphonic and power metal get confused.
Yes. But if you listen to like songs like Bed of Razors or Silent Night, Bodom Night, yeah, you're not going to get power metal from either of those.
No, you're not. But we'll have to break that down more on a Children of Bodom episode someday.
And I would hold off on doing anything black metal oriented because I got a message from 70s a couple days ago. He wants to do a black metal show.
Okay.
Cool. So I figured that way, if you do one, and when we go to do that, he originally wanted to do it on the 15th, but that got postponed for the reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that way we could do like a lead into it.
Yeah, maybe we'll do like early Marduk or another second wave black metal band. Like we've already done Emperor.
Marduk's a fine choice.
Yeah, but we'll do like the first couple ones, but we won't do Panzer Division yet. Because that, I think, is where second wave black metal hits its peak.
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
It's at its edgiest anyway.
I don't know about all that.
Well, no, without going over the edge into parody.
Again, I don't know about all that.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I know a couple of the bands you're talking about.
Not even the bands, it's just what was going on at the time, too.
Well, yeah.
You don't get much edgier than burning down a church.
Where it's like they're actually saying this shit in a honest way rather than what it would later, especially Panzer Division being what some idiots on Twitter would later try to associate it with, which resulted in them trying to cancel Marduk, which we've said a couple of times is one of the most hilarious things I've ever heard.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, it's like they wanted to pick a fight with the band, and if you've never seen Morgan from
Yeah, Morgan's bigger than I am,
Marta.
and I'm a giant of a human being.
He Imperatus is bigger than me. I'm 6'2", and Morgan's about 6'8".
Yeah, he's a big boy.
And he's not like a tall, skinny 6'8" either. He's like
No.
built like a normal human, just 50% larger. I wouldn't be surprised if he's close to 300 pounds.
I mean, hell, I am.
But 300 pounds of just solid muscle.
Yeah, I mean, it's just mass. I don't, I'm definitely a little out of shape, but it's not like I'm fat.
Well, yeah, you're like me, where it's like I'm a little chunky, but I'm on the bigger side, so it's fine.
Yeah. But yeah,
man.
I mean, like I said, you don't get much edgier than actually burning down churches.
Yeah, no, you don't. But I don't count that as edgy. I count that as actually acting upon it.
Weren't some of those churches like ancient pagan? Like,
yeah, they were. Well, not ancient pagan.
They weren't pagan, but they were from the Viking
like
era.
Century.
So they were kind of like fucking themselves by burning down the churches.
To a degree, and the drummer Hellhammer made a comment about it back in the day where he's like, I agree with what they're doing. They're just essentially, he said, I agree with what they're doing. They're just picking the wrong targets. They should be going after the modern ones on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to be a terrorist, don't just be.
Yeah, but that act of them burning churches in Norway was an act of terrorism as far as the Norse were concerned.
Oh, I completely agree.
Very religious.
That is terror. Going around burning.
Welcome to the line where free speech meets actual terrorism. And some of the early black metal bands like Mayhem should look behind them.
Yeah,
because they're well over it at this point. And that was before Varg stabbed their singer to death. Oops.
Yeah, I warned 70s when he said he wanted to do a black metal show. I'm like, we're going to be covering topics that
might not be YouTube friendly.
Yeah.
And honestly, the funny thing is, I want to do more of that on Rumble with you guys, where we can just be free and talk about all of this shit because it was all going on.
Oh, you can say whatever the hell you want on Rumble.
Yeah, as long as it's not
really.
And we can also play some of the music behind us while we're talking.
True.
Which is something I've always wanted to do with this show. And Paradise, you know that since the first time we streamed together. And it's been hampering the show since the very beginning, and I've always wanted to do it. So I kind of want to do it even in a pre-recorded state because apparently Rumble's hard to stream to. And my internet connection is not the greatest.
Right.
So we'll experiment around with that behind the scenes, and hopefully we can get that working because I really want to do that.
Right.
I've got a Rumble channel.
The darker side, or the more authentic side of this shit, rather than tiptoeing around the actual issue, which is something I hate. Like it sounds disingenuous. It sounds pussyish, and just like, oh yeah, well we can't say what they were really trying to get at. Like, why not? We're not saying we agree with it. We're just telling you what they were doing.
Did you ever see the old Burzum shirt? I think it was like a white shirt or a black shirt. It had Varg on the front with the band logo on the back. It just said the Church Burning Tour of '94, and it showed all the locations on a map of Norway.
Yeah, I think I've seen that shirt. Coming to a church near you.
Yeah, yeah. Or the original pressing of his album.
Admitting to all of them.
Oh yeah.
I saw a picture of that. I thought that was photoshopped.
No, that was an actual shirt.
That's real.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
That ranks up there with the album he released. Translates to Ashes in English. You know how like CDs will have that little part of the case that's hollow.
Yep.
Like on the edge. He filled it with matches.
No.
Yes. For the first printing. Yeah.
Oh, that's fucking.
That's hilarious.
I mean, we all know. I mean, we know Varg is a piece of work, but him being a piece of work goes further back than you might think.
Yeah, it's just like, oh yeah, he became a lunatic after like all the guilt and stuff. Like, no,
he was always
been crazy a lot longer than people think.
Yes, go look at some of the photos from when he was in court.
This is the part of black metal that's unintentionally funny.
Oh God! Don't get me wrong. I love the scene. I love the genre, but yeah, there is some stuff. Even I'm like, come on, guys.
Well, I mean, are you really a fan of a genre or anything if you can't laugh at the stupidity of some of the stuff that happens?
I know, right? It's like that's why ABBA works so well for me, at least. It's because he's in on
Or
some of the jokes.
on some
Or
of the
he
Star
knows
Wars, where it's like Star Trek memes, like Star Trek is one of the best ones. Where it's like if you can't laugh at the bullshit techno babble that's going on, like come on, like it's a known trope. They have no idea what they're talking about.
and pretending that people don't care about like money in the future. Like, come on.
Well, not only that, they're just making up words when they're talking about how to solve a problem. They're literally just making up words that make no sense.
I'll have to defer to others on the Star Trek war. That's not my wheelhouse.
Although Star Wars is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
the same way as well.
Yeah. And most sci-fi settings are where some of it is just hand waving bullshit, and you have to be okay with that. Because we're talking
most of it is damaged. All that stuff.
I mean, honestly, though, at least with BattleTech, they're still using real world companies.
That's one of my favorite fucking things is that General Motors is still a thing in the 31st
century. I guess Text either said something or sent like a letter.
Oh, he's gotten multiple letters from GM.
Yeah.
Because he's done 2 GM mechs, the Blackjack and the Marauder.
Yeah, and he's been like, hey, so what's going on with that fusion reactor you guys are supposed to be working on right about now?
The best part is they must know the joke because they responded in character.
Yeah, and that's what he said. He's like, GM, as far as that goes, he's like, I can't speak to the quality of their vehicles, but as far as, their sense of humor, they at least have one.
Oh, God, yeah. And honestly, that's one of those just like just for knowing that you're in this universe, and they're far from the only one.
Mm-hmm.
Krupp Interstellar is still a thing. Or was as of the Star League. I don't know if they're still a thing by 3025.
Right.
But we will go into that relatively soon on a second episode of Random Fandom that we're going to do on BattleTech. That will probably be very long involved and very, very nerdy.
Yeah, probably. I don't know if that's going to be bad or you and me and Phil doing that Mech Warrior campaign.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. We're going to kind of do both sides of it. Where that we may or may not record that one. Depends on what Phil wants to do, and also, what we do on that campaign. I may or may not record and upload that to Rumble, but especially Rumble because I know my mouth. I'll say at least 4 words an episode that'll get us banned off of fucking YouTube.
Yeah, and I'm going to be trying to channel my inner text, so.
Yeah. Just throwing shit. And between you and me throwing shade at the Capellans constantly.
Yeah, that'll be a thing. That'll be a thing.
And
much to Razor Fist chagrin, I'll probably throw a little bit of hate at fucking Merrick as well.
Yeah.
Because you know me, I like my Steiners.
House Merrick isn't hard. They're not bad.
No, they're just pretentious.
They're just a clusterfuck, essentially.
Hey, let's continue in a line of a nation that died in like the freaking 20th century.
It's like, okay,
Space Habsburgs.
You really think so?
Is essentially how I look at them. The Space Habsburgs.
Yeah, but yeah, they kind of are Austria-Hungary in space, with little bits of America in there, or Holland.
Mm-hmm.
Like 18th and 19th century Holland.
I mean, like I said, either I lean towards the Steiners or I lean towards the periphery.
I obviously lean towards the Federated Sons.
Yeah, well, whatever, Fed boy.
Hey, we're part of the same faction for a long time.
Yeah. That's why I said I also lean towards the periphery too.
Yeah, true. The Taurians, if they didn't hate House Davian so much, it would be.
They hate everybody.
That's true. They're basically Space Texas of basically fuck you all, leave me alone. And nobody ever leaves them alone and learns the hard way why they should have.
Yeah, no shit. Anyways, back to Bolt Thrower.
Yes. With the last album we want to talk about on this one, I just picked my 3 favorites so far. These are not in chronological order.
The first two are.
The first 2 are, and then
this one jumps a good decade or so, if not more.
Yeah, this is the last album they ever released.
Yeah, this is a good album. This had some great tracks.
fucking solid all the way through.
And also with these guys too, after like the first couple of albums, their lyrical content leaned more towards the horrors of war.
Yes, and
They always kind of had that, but they
dark.
really leaned into it.
Yeah, one comment I saw in one of their videos that I was watching was basically these guys are like the dark side of Sabaton,
Mm-hmm.
which they're absolutely right. Where Sabaton sometimes will talk about like the glory and the good parts of war.
The
They will
romanticism.
talk about the horrors as well. These guys very much focused on the dark side of it, of the brutality and the fucking actual mechanics of war. Like, there's a song I really love on this album, The Kill Chain, where they basically walk you through the process of like a drone strike.
Whoa, when was that released?
2005.
Wow,
So
they
they
didn't
may
even
not
have
have been talking
drones.
about a drone strike, but they might have been talking about like a guided missile or something.
Or
like
AC,
that.
yeah, it might have been
okay.
an airstrike or AC-130,
Oh,
which
okay.
was basically the same thing, just with people behind it rather than
Some guy in a AC unit. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Because like when I think of drone strikes, I think of the Obama administration 09 through pretty much 2016. That's what I think of.
Well, I mean, you guys have all played Call of Duty 4, right?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
That scene with the AC-130 orbiting that area, that's literally how that looks.
Oh, okay.
And it is that lethal. I've seen the receiving end of it, and holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, you could go with even albums a little older than this, not as old as War Master or the other one there. Like for Victory, you have Lest We Forget. That kind of, it's a pretty impactful song if you actually figure out what they're talking about.
And you need both sides of that equation.
Or even off their third record. I think it was their third, The Fourth Crusade.
Yes. Which I thought was great because it's actually their fourth record.
Is that their fourth?
Yeah, it is their fourth record. And they're also talking about The Fourth Crusade, which
for
those
like
who are
songs
not
like This Time It's War, Where Next to Conquer.
They tried to conquer the Middle East, and instead the Crusaders ended up sacking Constantinople.
Yeah.
Oops.
Or For Victory, not For Victory. Mercenary from '98. That which is also Warhammer art.
Yes.
Because I think they used the version of that for the first expansion for the first Dawn of War.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot that, yeah.
But, with tracks like Powder Burns.
Mm-hmm.
That song not only epitomizes war and war metal, but also death metal with just the sheer horror of something like that happening to someone.
Yep. What I love about those ones, Loyal, though, is almost every song on this album is almost groove metal in a way where they just have this rhythm that's fucking infectious. Whether it be Anti-Tank, Dead Armor, or The Kill Chain, or a couple other songs on this record. It's literally just one of the best riffs you've ever heard.
Yeah, they have a lot of really good, catchy riffs.
Yeah, Granite Wall's another one that has this driving power behind it. It's really great. And the Middle East isn't so much. Central Asia is where that lives. Namely speaking, Afghanistan, where everyone's tried to conquer them. Only one has succeeded, and that was the Mongols. Because they're basically the most brutal human beings to ever live. And basically changed the entire shape of Asia forever.
Pretty much, yeah.
Including their genetic makeup, because I think, a third of humanity is somehow distantly related to Genghis Khan himself?
Something like that, yeah. It's crazy.
And it's amazing because he snuggled so many women that like a third of humanity is somehow related to Genghis Khan at this point, no matter where you grew up. It's insane.
What mad lad do you get to play Genghis Khan in a fucking biopic?
I don't know that you'd be allowed to make a biopic.
There are probably reasons why they had John Wayne do it back in the day there, just so it was not as
offensive.
Oh, John Wayne did it already?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
That's good enough for me. That's good enough for me.
Oh, it's such a terrible movie, too.
Oh, it really is. And it's also possibly the reason John Wayne died of cancer. Because where that movie was filmed was right near the New Mexico testing grounds.
Oh, man.
But let's put it this way. He doesn't change his voice or accent.
Yeah, picture Genghis Khan speaking like John Wayne.
That's how I imagine Genghis Khan speaking.
I don't know. I just really don't think I could picture Genghis Khan going, well, saddle up, Jamuka. Sorry, I just can't.
That's what he says to the ladies in the sack before he.
Oh God!
Not a good movie at all.
Although it can be one of those movies that's so bad it's funny.
I don't know about all that.
Well, just the fact that someone tried to shoehorn John Wayne in as
fair enough.
But a lot of this is based on World War I, especially entrenched or anti-tank or stuff like that, or when cannons fade. And this was actually released on November 11th, 2005, which is really cool because that's actually released on Armistice Day. Which there's been a ton of European stuff that's been done about World War I, especially Sabaton's last two albums since. But I really dig that they did this. And we still have to do that 1916 review. I haven't forgotten. I've just gotten busy. Because Sabaton just did a cover of Motorhead's 1916.
Shit, I gotta. So that's something I should be listening to.
Don't. I will do a. We'll do a video on that over on Rumble where I pre-record it.
Okay.
Because I wanted to do this with both you and Paradis anyway, where, like I said, we were able to actually play the music, and then talk about it and stuff like that over there.
Okay. That sounds good. That sounds good to me, man.
Yeah, we can actually pick through it and
analyze it as it's happening.
Exactly. Do what we always wanted to do with this show and what the original idea of it was. Just YouTube wouldn't let us without striking us immediately.
Yeah.
And depending on the band, sometimes it's fine. You just can't monetize it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had videos get
some bands that'll be like, "Oh, thank you for playing my stuff."
Yeah, exactly. Where it's just like, I know some of them don't even strike your shit. They're just like, okay, cool.
It's almost inevitably not the bands itself, but the label.
It's the labels.
EMI. It's always EMI.
EMI, Napalm Records is pretty bad. Nuclear Blast is pretty bad.
Sony.
And gee, what's funny? You know what's funny about both Napalm and wait, never mind. It's not the right. I was gonna say, you know what's funny about both Napalm, Nuclear Blast, and the way they act? They're both German labels. But then again, I think Napalm might actually be Austrian. So 6 of one, half dozen the other.
Yeah, well, most of the worst parts of Germany are Austrian.
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Give us no
fucks. I just love how Austria got away with starting 2 world wars and gets none of the blame for either of them.
I know. Exactly.
But it's weird because using Napalm Records as an example, when I first started hearing bands off Napalm Records, it was all underground shit. It was like Abigor and Summoning were like their 2 big bands, and
nowadays they're a lot more into the symphonic and power metal scene.
Yeah, then all of a sudden,
if
you're not on Nuclear Blast, you're on Napalm. I'm like, when the fuck did this happen?
Right. Although I will say, as a quick programming note, there is a new Enforcer album out. I will be doing a review on it, probably over on Rumble. You guys should absolutely check it out because I like it a lot. Because I just put it up in our Gilded, 3 days ago? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
But if you want the link to our Gilded, where I post a lot of stuff like that, and you can talk to us directly and stuff and all that, it's right in the description of the video. I think it's the first link I have in there. We'd absolutely love to have you over there because we're constantly talking about show ideas, shit posting, all sorts of memeing and stuff like that, which is great. And we would love to have you over there to anyone watching. So
It's kind of funny and ironic for me coming up with ideas for this show is, nothing.
yeah.
But a lot of the ideas I have come up with have gone to 70s.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I'm constantly trying to balance, am I going to talk about it? Or are you going to talk about it? Is Nick going to talk about it? Or is 70s going to talk about it? Like there's one band, if you'll notice, we haven't done at all because we have an idea for a show on that. And
Sabbath?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're waiting on Nick for that one.
Yes, because he came up with the idea, and I don't want to step on his toes for that one, but it's one of those bands like, come on. You need to talk about it. It's the elephant in the room at this point. But yeah, that will happen when it happens, and you'll know when it happens. Because it's literally going to be the four of us on stream for what, 12 hours probably?
Oh, God only knows. And he said it was going to be more than the four of us. He was going to have guests.
Oh yeah, we're going to have guests, but in terms of like us on there for the entire time.
Yeah.
It's going to get fun and or retarded, one or the other. Knowing us, probably both. But yeah, if you're going to listen to one of these three albums, I would pick this one.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
This is their most polished, and I think some of their...
I wouldn't necessarily say the most polished, but the most produced, and I'm not saying that in a bad way.
That's what I mean by polished, is like it's produced well. The mix is great. Everything's clear. You can tell they didn't scrub out the other shit that they wanted in. It's not overproduced, but it is clearly produced, which I think is great. And the bass work on this record, holy shit. I don't know of many albums I've ever heard that have a louder bass track than this.
Now you got me
like that bass guitar in, even Anti-Tank or whatever is just fucking monstrous. You know what? I may even look it up on here and see if we can get away with it for a few seconds without offending the gods. Let's see if I can look it up on here because I really want you to hear some of this. All right, we will start sharing this over here.
It is mixed very well. It really
is.
Yeah. I don't hear the bass as much as that stand out as much as you do, but that's just yeah. Oh, there it is. Ooh, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this.
Oh, dude, like that is just brutal as fuck.
Yeah, and the thing about
right here, I probably should have listened.
Is their sound, at least to me, Pope, you may agree or disagree, I'm not sure, but it actually encapsulates war.
Oh, just God, yeah.
Driving forward, the progression, just endlessly marching on.
And the industrial brutality of it.
Mm-hmm.
Where it just never stops. It's constantly going at a constant speed, and it doesn't fucking matter.
Mm-hmm.
I love the tone of this last record. It's so much fun.
Well, I'm just saying their tone, just their style and sound in general, not just this record, but like.
Oh yeah, I mean that's one of the things that drew me to them in general was just their tone and melody in general. But the special part, because even their breakdowns where they kind of slow down a little bit, it kind of just sounds like a breakdown where you're just kind of in this trance. And then they just hit right back into it.
Yeah, they're doomy without going to the absurdness that is Funeral Doom.
Yeah, exactly. They're kind of like basically a mix of thrash metal and Candlemass.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Which dude, that bass riff, I can't get it out of my head half the time.
Yeah, that's definitely, and it also goes to show all these people talk about, oh, the metal scene, the underground metal scenes are misogynistic. Bassist for this band was a female, was a woman, Joe Bench.
Mm-hmm. Always has been too, from
Yeah.
87 all the
One of
way
the
through to
founding members.
2016.
The founding
She's
member
a
of
fucking
Folklore
monster too.
was a female. Interesting.
And she's a fucking beast too.
Mm-hmm.
Throw out those sexist claims.
Yeah, well, you know, anybody who says women can't play bass, I'm just going to throw Courtney at them.
Yeah, right.
Because, yeah, she did for a couple of bands and a lot of years. And she's really good at it too.
All right, it's a Courtney.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh,
Have you ever heard of Fang?
no. I've heard the band Fang. Yeah.
She was their bassist.
Fuck out of here.
Yep.
I'm looking this up.
Oh, I just wish she was in chat or here to see this. You never knew that?
No.
She's mentioned it on. She's mentioned it on 70s show, not here.
Which albums? Because the lineup solidified as McBride, Chris Wilson.
That I don't know, and I haven't asked. So, but she was one of their bass players.
Cool.
And I believe also booked for them and did a whole bunch of other stuff with them for a long time. She's been part of the punk scene forever.
She's been part of the punk scene like I've been part of the metal scene.
Yeah, like she's been like orbiting the entire scene for like 35, 40 years now.
I will fucking ask her this. I will pick her brain. I did not know that. That's fucking cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you know, there's a lot of correlations between like a lot of the more extreme metal and punk genres because these guys were initially classed as grindcore, which, given their early stuff, I can kind of see with their punkier leanings and stuff like that. I can kind of see that, but yeah, death metal is death metal is where these guys belong, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
I can hear the grindcore stuff, but like you'd also have to classify stuff like Cannibal Corpse and Slayer in that. If you ascribe to like the kind of sonic stuff that they're picking out as grindcore. I think that grindcore was coming up at the same time as this stuff, but is a different genre. Like it's hard to explain like that, where like it was contemporary but not the same. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's I would agree with that.
Like kind of parallel development and similar, but not much in the way of overlap. Whereas grindcore kind of comes from the hardcore punk scene.
Yeah.
And is much more focused on horror themes and stuff like that. Death metal is very much focused on the gore and horror side of metal. So like there's a topical overlap, but musically not that much. Other than the stuff that they both share with thrash.
Right.
So it's really cool. Again, this is one of those really cool periods where you have another branch of metal and punk kind of paralleling each other, but also breaking off from the mainstream genre.
Right.
Which happened throughout the entire 1980s and into the 90s. Because like you had like 15 different genres of metal and like 4 of punk spawned in the 80s.
Yeah, this is true.
And then in the 90s, you saw a couple other ones pop up, like groove metal, industrial, or at least become popular.
Was also a thing in the 80s too.
Yeah, industrial existed in the 80s, but really became. In fact, I would go as far as to say industrial kind of starts with Judas Priest in 1980.
I wouldn't
with British Steel.
A little bit with Metal Gods.
Metal Gods, and also that pounding sound effect in the beginning of Rapid Fire, where they're adding a little bit of that pounding rhythm and a lot of that into it. And then that kind of inspired. It may not be part of the genre, but that's kind of what inspired it. And then later on, you'd get bands like Rammstein and Fear Factory out of it, which are fucking awesome. Like industrial kind of combined that like kind of almost thrash and speed with German EDM, essentially, which is great. But you wouldn't really hear that until the 90s for the most part. Although, do you know of any industrial bands that came out in the 80s?
KMFDM for one.
Oh, yeah, that's right. KMFDM. I keep forgetting about those guys. So yeah, that's coming out right about this time, late 80s. Hair metal is about dying.
Bear in mind, though, the industrial scene in the 80s wasn't what we think of it as today. It was more in line with the goth scene.
Yeah, where it's like super underground. It was kind of weird. It was kind of its own thing.
Yep.
Separate from either the metal or punk communities and EDM community. Because it was kind of like this bastard child of all three of them. And it's kind of like how metal was at first when you look at the rock and blues community, where they're both looking at each other like, we're not responsible for this. And we're in the middle like, but we're from both of you. We do a lot of covers from both of you too. Especially in the early years, which we're going to go into on Thursday. In fact, if you guys want to come on Thursday to talk about like the rise of heavy metal, I would love to have you both on for History of Rock and Roll Part 4.
I'll have to see what's going on.
Because this is the one where we're going to be tying it all in and going into bands like, the Kinks, Deep Purple, Cream, Led Zeppelin. We're going to be tying it right into 1970 and the beginnings of Black Sabbath. And the beginning of the titan that was heavy metal. So hopefully you guys will all join us for that. Not too big a spoiler. We are going to be we're going to be continuing on from that point too, because I know you guys have loved this series and I've really liked doing it. So I'm going to keep doing it, and we're going to start going down into some of those subgenres too, like punk or folk and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you guys will join us for that journey. But with all that being said, Sentinel, overall, what was your opinion of these these albums?
They're awesome. I wish they were part of my death metal accoutrement. When I was first getting into death metal in like 2007, 2008, I had heard all of the traditional death bands, and I heard some like kind of newer ones like I don't know if they're Black or Death Calma is one of these bands that I got interested. The Black Waltz is a fucking amazing album. But I wish I had known of them because they remind me so much of Amon Amarth, which I'm a huge fan of. So
yeah, they are very similar, especially in the historical themes on a lot of their later stuff.
Yeah,
it's very, very reminiscent of Amon Amarth, and maybe even inspired them a little bit because these guys existed before them.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Yeah, I wish like I said, I'll have to re-listen to definitely the one about World War One.
Those ones loyal.
Those ones, yeah. I've got that saved in my library, and I might even buy it on CD.
Which the funny thing is, out of all of the 40K references, that could have been the most awesome of them because, for those of you who are 40K nerds, well, half of the Space Marine legions turned traitor. So you could have done the entire thing on like the war on Horus's side of the heresy, which would have been great. Like do like the word bearers, the Sons of Horus, all of that kind of shit. That would have been great to do another 40K reference on. But by that point, I think the relationship between the band and Games Workshop had kind of deteriorated as Games Workshop has gotten more and more litigious over their career to the point where they're now basically snooty assholes who, if you even come close to their IP, will attack you for it. But with all that being said, Imperatus, what were your opinions on this album, on these guys?
They were a regular rotation.
Okay,
for a long time. They were good and they were different from everything else that was coming out, even in the same genre.
Yeah, I can easily see that. Where like I've heard Napalm Death and I've heard Cannibal Corpse, and I wasn't really a fan of either one of them. And then I heard this stuff, and like it just clicked with me. So maybe it was just that like little bit different sonically that I needed to kind of get into it. Maybe
They
I will
had
go
the
back
right
and listen.
ingredients. They just mixed them in the way that you were supposed to mix them for yourself.
Yeah, and maybe I'll go back and listen to Cannibal Corpse or other stuff now, and I'll get it because I didn't used to get black metal at all either. And then I listened to Motorhead, Venom, and Bathory in a row due to Razor Fist and my buddy Devin's recommendations, and I got it. All of a sudden, it just made sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe I just needed that like musical Rosetta Stone in order to make it make sense in my head.
A lot happens. Like a band from like 10, 20 years ago that I just kind of ignored. All of a sudden, I'll go back and listen to it, and I'll just have to just binge and buy all the records because it suddenly makes sense to me. I get it.
I was that way with Motorhead, where like I kept hearing Ace of Spades and a couple other ones, and I never really cared.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard one of them, a tribute band, play some of their stuff live, and it just made sense at that point. It's like, oh shit, yeah, okay, like that's how you're supposed to hear this. Cool. And all of a sudden, it just clicked, and Motorhead became one of my favorite bands of all time. But it just, it was missing part of the equation, I guess. But yeah, with all that being said, Sentinel, what do you got going on this week, man?
I'm busy. Totally busy. Helping out to do work, and helping out with the issue with the family member that I'm dealing with right now. So I'm going to be busy, but I will try, and at least you can always catch me on Twitter at the Sentinel 831, and
For now, until you say something naughty and get banned again.
I'll get banned again, and then I'll buy a new track phone, and then I'll have a new number, and then I'll be back on there. They won't keep me away this time. I'll be like a fucking herpes. So you'll probably like see Twitter for me is easy because you can stay in contact with me pretty easily, and yeah, it's pretty easy just to kind of write something and just kind of just move on, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like sitting down streaming for several hours, or in the middle of the week, where sometimes things come up in the middle of the night and they have to be addressed, kind of thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was true even when I was on there, and he got into even more fights than I did.
I got into a fight with D. Snyder and won.
That was fucking hilarious to watch, by the way, because even you were handing him his ass, and he had no defense against it.
I was just throwing his own words right back at him, basically.
That's the best part, is you're throwing his own quotes in his face. Because how are you supposed to refute your own shit?
Exactly.
It's like, oh yeah, well, who said that? You in 1985. Fuck.
And then Razor Fist basically came in and just kind of fatality the rest of it.
Yeah, it's like, in my mind,
nothing.
you gave him the alley oop.
Yeah. And he
You
slammed
just put him in perfect position to just fucking slam it right down.
Yeah, he slammed it like Shaq. Just. And
That
then he
shit
put
was
out
a
video of D.
masterpiece.
Snyder as a dehydrated sack. I was never so proud.
Yeah, that was just a masterpiece. But Imperatus, what do you got going on recently, man?
Not a whole lot, really. Gotta figure a few things out, see what's going on this week.
Absolutely. And you occasionally do a series on comics with comics curmudgeons with Doc, right?
Yeah. I do that kind of sporadically, pretty much when me and him are both available at the same time.
Okay.
So
it's just kind of an as is, whereas kind of thing, almost like
we're gonna do it a bit more.
Scott.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing a bit more regularly. We were talking about that after the last one, not like a weekly or bi-weekly, but probably more once, maybe twice a month, and then also rotate in a comics and cocktails night.
Nice.
Because it's been said multiple times by multiple people. It's like, this is a conversation you would have with a bunch of comic geeks at a bar.
Yes, absolutely it is. I've stuck around for a couple of them, and man, I mean, you guys are bringing up stuff about comics from before I was even alive, so that's really cool to see, because I don't know a lot of that era. Like, comics is like my third or fourth or fifth hobby at this point. where it's just kind of like, yeah, it's there, but I don't really pay attention to it as much as I probably should. But you should all absolutely go check his channel out. He's awesome, and he's got some really, really knowledgeable guests on.
Imperative,
still need-
pop your link.
Do a Gundam Evolution stream.
The game is ass.
It is, but it'll be fun to tear into it.
I'm waiting for Battle Operation 2 to hit Steam.
Fair enough. We might do it then, because that
Imperative, if you could put your channel link in the private chat, I could post it on the main chat on YouTube for everybody to see.
Yes, and for those of the rest of you, I have posted the handles for both of these guys in the description. I believe if you click on that link, it'll send you to their channel page. If I understand how the handle system works on YouTube correctly, which I might not. But you should absolutely check both of these guys out. Sentinel, we're going to have to do a Star Wars episode at one point.
We will.
Talking about the good old days.
The good old days.
And then the hell that it has become.
Yeah. Modern Disney. I honestly helped coin the term. I before I was the Sentinel, I was somebody else, and I helped coin the term Disney Star Wars because it is Disney Star Wars.
It is. There is a clear line of demarcation.
Yes, clearly. It happens around 2015.
I'd say around 20. When did they get the rights to it? 2012.
They got the rights to it in 2012, but it didn't start. It didn't officially really become Disney Star Wars until the expanded universe was decanonized. Once that happened, that
happened in like 2014, right ahead.
That happened, April 25th, 2014, and people were pissed.
Yeah, right before Force Awakens, they basically were like, oh yeah, by the way, the EU's not out of the window, and this is a whole new story.
Yeah, this is a whole new story, but people were pissed, understandably, and people were kind of like, okay, let's see what you got. Let's see how
it was like. All right, I'm not happy because I've been collecting those books for the last 15 years and read every single one of them, and I absolutely adore that storyline. But now that you're going to decanonize it, we'll see what you've got. And all of the best parts of the sequel and post or in Disney era stuff, well, the best parts of it have been stolen straight from the EU.
Pretty much.
Which makes me...
And I'm trying to do a bunch of things.
I'm actually trying to figure out how to do that. I don't remember how. It's been a long time since I have done that. I may have to do it over here.
There's my channel. If you want to sub to me.
Yeah. And for those, you can just click the video description, and they both should be in there. I always put stuff like that in there. Let's put it this way. Let's see if I can find it over here.
I completely agree, Fizz. I've been trying to get through KOTOR. I've tried playing that game on 3 different fucking platforms.
KOTOR?
Yeah, KOTOR, the original KOTOR. It is so fucking tedious.
I love that game.
If it was based more on like the episode 1 PC game where you're given a choice, but the gameplay, it's not as like, I don't know. It's just maybe I'm just too much of a console peasant or something like that. But
it was designed for console.
For me, I'm trying to get through it. I'm sledging through it slowly but surely. It's just
a turn-based RPG, essentially. Sort of.
I heard KOTOR 2 is a much better...
It's smoother, but it has a lot more problems because they never finish the game, just like Obsidian does with all of their stuff. Where it's really good.
And then it fucks up at the end.
But they never finish it, and they have to end up cutting content.
Oh.
So, but they leave some of the storylines in there, and yet you never get to do it. So it's just like, you're gonna just leave me hanging here. You're just gonna tease that storyline, but never actually come out with it because you can't finish.
You know what I'll do is I'll probably either read a novelization version of KOTOR because there's plenty of novelization. Well, there isn't a novelization for KOTOR, but I'll probably just watch a walkthrough just to get the experience from somebody else who knows what they're doing and has better fucking hand-eye coordination, I suppose.
Yeah, that's the thing, Soul Assassin, is it got rushed. And I think that's the worst part is every game Obsidian has done is like half one of the best games I've ever played. If it had been executed right, but half of it's so buggy that you can't finish it. Like Fallout New Vegas, KOTOR 2, Alpha Protocol. Like a lot of it was a great idea that was executed really poorly. And I can't help it, like Obsidian just doesn't know what a budget is and or doesn't know what a timetable is and has these really ambitious ideas and just can never achieve them on time. I don't know. But they consistently get fired off of projects for going over budget and over timeline. And yet their ideas, that even though they come across half-baked in the game, are fucking excellent and some of the best mechanics in the game. They're one of those guys that just kind of like you reach for the stars, and sometimes you hit London.
Yeah.
But no, they're great games, and we'll have to get more into that on its own stream.
You could do an entire stream strictly on Star Wars video games, and I would get
Star Wars video games just on KOTOR.
Just on KOTOR, yeah.
Or the 90s stuff, like remember X-Wing?
I never played X-Wing. That's the thing. My Star Wars video games accoutrement starts at Shadows of the Empire and then goes all the way to about 2009-ish. So everything from like that through Force Unleashed to...
Yeah, when I was a very, very little kid, I played the original Star Wars X-Wing.
I heard that's an awesome game.
It really is, and there's a version on GOG that you can get that's like $4.
Okay.
You will need a joystick though, because that's the only command input it knows.
Fuck. Well, see, this is one of the downsides about having a Mac. This is you
PC only, man.
Yeah.
Mac does not.
When people say PC master race, I get it now. You are the master race.
Well, I mean, it's because all PC games are coded for Windows, because it's a much easier OS to work with than iOS, which is Linux.
Yeah.
There are ways you can make it work on a Mac, but...
Ooh, yes. You would love Republic Commando.
Yes, Republic Commando's fantastic. And yes, Soul Assassin, I remember the leak of the art for KOTOR 3, but again, we'll get into all this in a special Star Wars stream that we'll do another day, because, I have to go here real soon, and I know you guys do too.
Yeah.
But as for me, you guys can catch me every Monday except for this one on It's Only Talk and Roll over on 70s Rock Fans channel. For the duration of the NHL playoffs, you can catch me every Sunday or every Saturday night, on Bourbon and Boarding over on 70s channel, and Brahma Bulls over on Rumble. You can catch my channel over on Rumble. I'm trying to put up a couple of unique videos a week over there that you won't get over here. So make sure you guys are following me over on Rumble as well. Same username. Look for me and you'll find it. A lot of it's reposts of this stuff, but I will try to do some more original content over there, because I do want to support Rumble as much as possible, because they're a much better and more forgiving alternative to YouTube. And other than that, again, you can catch me here every week. I think next week we may go over... what did we say? I'm already forgetting. Anyway, we'll figure it out later, because I'm apparently having a brain fart. But with all that being said, take care, stay safe. I love you all, and I'll catch you next time.